Right. So I think we're ready to go. Thank you, Joy. Appreciate it. And thanks for putting all of this together. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. I know it's a busy time, and I appreciate your interest and willingness to join us today for this particular session of the Galileo K-12 conference. I'm here today to talk a little bit about not just a powerful ally, which certainly Galileo is, but a partner. Galileo is an important partner to the work that National History Day does here in the state of Georgia. So what I want to do over the course of the next 25, 30 minutes or so is to tell you a little bit about National History Day, to then talk about the partnership that we have with Galileo and one of its direct products of that partnership. And then with the time that we have remaining, I hope to be able to answer a question or two. So without further ado, let's get going here. Let's see if I can make this work. A little bit about National History Day. If for those of you that aren't familiar with it, National History Day, the old motto about National History Day is that it's not just a day, it's an experience. And indeed, that's what it is. National History Day is a co-curricular program for students in grades 6 through 12. If you go to the national website and you go to nationalhistoryday.org and you look at their mission statement, they place a great deal of emphasis upon history education, studying the past to understand the present and to shape the future. So their primary focus is upon this notion of history education. I tend to think of it in a slightly different way. I look at National History Day as basically history lab, much like you have labs in the sciences. It's History Day. It's history lab. It's an opportunity for students to conduct research, right, within the field, to develop research skills, to develop analytical thinking skills, right, skills of analysis by practicing it and doing analysis, and then skills in communication by literally presenting and defending their work. So I like to think of it as a history lab, and I like to think of it as very much an exercise in through the prism of the study of history and through the prism of your history curriculum to actually be working on skills that are transferable and that are applicable across all of the work that they're going to do during their school years and in fact beyond. And I think it's important to keep in mind when we're thinking about History Day as an entity kind of from 30,000 feet, that it really is all about the student. It is a program that empowers students really and truly by encouraging them to take ownership over their work. Remember that the way that History Day works, right, the way it operates is that students will choose the topic. Now, you may well set the parameters and define the frame within which they're working, but within those parameters you set, they choose the topic. The students do the research, right? They do the analysis. And then they what? They make the argument. And they are the ones that present, discuss, and defend their work. So you notice throughout that, it's about actions the student has to take, responsibility and ownership that the student takes over her or his work. Okay, good. So how does this work? How is this structured? Well, every year in the program, there is an annual theme. This year's theme is turning points in history. The themes rotate over the years. We've had, you can see some of them there and in the blue box, right? The individual in history, rights and responsibilities in history, debate and diplomacy in history, conflict and compromise. This year's is turning points in history. The theme is designed to be very big, very broad, very open in order to give students the opportunity to find topics that fit underneath the umbrella. Right? Because it's very important that students be able to show that whatever it is that they're doing, whatever their topic is, it relates to the theme. So how does that work? So they study the theme and then students select that topic. And the topic can be any field of history, right? It can be world history. It can be American history. Lots of students do American history topics. Lots of students in Georgia do Georgia history topics because so many of them do History Day projects in 8th grade. But it can be women's history, it can be religious history, military history. It really is, from a program perspective, completely up to the student in terms of topics and the areas that they can choose from. However, that's something that you as the teacher are heavily involved in establishing and defining. But students select a topic, right? And they're going to want to be able to take that topic and show how it's going to relate to that theme. This year again, turning points in history. And then what do they do? Well, they decide they have to start making decisions and they have to start acting on things. And one of the early decisions that they're going to make is whether to work on their own by themselves or work in a group, because you have those options in National History Day. Then, once they've decided upon a topic and they've decided upon whether they're working on their own or they're working in a group, they get into what we think of as the bread and butter. They get into the research. And the expectation is that History Day students are going to do research in both primary and secondary sources. That the amount of time they're going to spend, the number of sources they're going to look at, again, the framework of the research is in many ways set by the teacher, but the goal is that they work in both of those categories of historical material, both secondary and primary source material. As they're going through this work and they're investigating their topics, they're going to be developing, asking, and answering research questions. We talk a lot about research questions and how they fine-tune what are the questions that they're trying to answer. We then ask students in History Day to take that next step. Once they've collected all that information, they pulled that material together to analyze it, to draw conclusions, and to develop a thesis, to develop a point, to make an argument. You begin to get a sense of why I think of it as kind of history lab. Once they do all of that, students then have to decide, okay, how am I going to present my work? And in National History Day, you can do that, right, in one of 5 different categories. You can produce a documentary film, you can develop and do a performance, you can build a website, you can produce an exhibit, right? You build an exhibit. Those 4 categories you can do individually or in a group. Or you can write a paper. That's the only category that's an individual exercise. So students are making all kinds of decisions and taking all sorts of actions throughout this entire process, including how are they going to present their work. And then if students enter the contest structure, they get a chance to discuss their work. They get to discuss their work with judges, right? In a contest environment, they're competing with fellow scholars, and the structure of those contests, those events in the state of Georgia, can begin at the school level. Some larger school systems will have school level competitions, can then proceed to then regional structure. And we have 10 regions in the state of Georgia this year. The state contest, which will convene in April of 2024 on my home campus of LaGrange College. And then, of course, the national contest. Last year, the delegation from Georgia, I believe we sent about 70 students to Washington, D.C. to compete at the national contest on the main campus of the University of Maryland. National History Day in Georgia is co-sponsored by Georgia Humanities and LaGrange College. Georgia Humanities has been a sponsor of National History Day for decades. We have been involved as a regional contest host for decades, but we became more intentional and more deliberate in terms of providing support and engaging the program statewide beginning in 2011. So both of the sponsoring organizations have a great deal of experience and a healthy tenure in terms of sponsoring and supporting the program. So that's a little bit about National History Day. Well, where does Galileo fit into this? Well, I should say just very quickly, this is our program website. If you want to jot it down, if you want to learn more about us, that's what you'll need to visit. You can visit the program website at www.lagrange.edu/NHD. Now, back to Galileo, our friends. Galileo has been fundamental to the work of National History Day. You know, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Galileo is an incredible resource in the state of Georgia, and we who are educators and our students at all levels are tremendously fortunate to have such a wonderful product as a virtual library available to use. Since it came online in the late 90s, it's been a tool that History Day educators and that sponsors, mentors have encouraged students to use. It is a massive endeavor, right? I looked up the statistics. I was working on these slides in the last couple of days, and I went and took a look at this, and those are some pretty healthy and impressive numbers. Almost 3,000 libraries across the state of Georgia can access Galileo. Last year, Galileo processed 48 million searches. That's an incredible number. And I just looked it up because I wanted to get the most recent number that was available. At my institution, we have access through Galileo to 294 databases. 294 databases. And you know, it's that last data point there, that 294 databases, that really caught our attention and was the impetus to being very intentional in developing our alliance and partnership with Galileo. Because as we got more and more involved in the dimension of mentoring and supporting teachers and students who were doing National History Day, we thought about that 294 databases, right? That 320, 310, whatever it was 10 years ago, whatever that number was. And we're thinking about those numbers in the context of our History Day students, most of whom, not all, but most of whom are middle school students, and in many cases could be jumping into National History Day and being asked to hit Galileo and explore Galileo in sixth grade, which means they're in the ripe old age of 11 or 12. So this notion of 294 databases led to a series of conversations that we had with our friends at Galileo. And out of those conversations came a resource and a tool that lives in Galileo that I really want to show you and talk to you about today, because it is a prime example of what happens when our partners engage. So what I want to introduce you to is something that's called the National History Day Research Guide. It is a resource that lives within Galileo. It has been constructed over the course of years and been modified and changed and evolved over the years. And it is designed to create and offer to History Day students a tool that takes the edge off that 294 databases. What we did over the course of the years is we asked the question, what are the databases and resources that History Day students in Georgia use most frequently? And as we identified what those resources were that students use most often in their History Day projects, what we did was we sent that information to Russell Palmer and our friends at Galileo, and they populated this guide. This guide at one point was
I'm not sure if anyone else can hear Kevin, but I cannot at this moment. Seems like his screen has frozen. Can you all let me know if you can hear anything? It could just be me. Anyone type into the chat and let me know. Oh, okay, frozen on your end too. Okay, so let me, and he's probably talking and talking and you know, no idea. So let me message
hello.
him.
I'm back.
There you're back. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I have no idea what happened.
You're still frozen, but maybe you'll be unfrozen anymore. Oh, there you go. Hey. All right. You're back.
Okay. Can I go ahead and jump back in as where I was at?
Yeah. Just jump back in. You were talking about the 294 databases and the guide that had been created to sort of whittle that down.
All right, so let me see where we are here. Okay, all right, so sorry about that, everybody. I don't know what happened. At any rate, what we did was we developed this tool that makes Galileo manageable for History Day students. And as I was thinking about what is the best example of this partnership that we have, I thought that it would be valuable to introduce you to this resource. And the reason why this is that I think this is applicable is that this is a tool that you can use regardless of whether you're using it for National History Day or not. You can use this to help bring your students, particularly middle school students who are early in their careers as researchers, you can use this tool to bring them into the world of Galileo, to introduce them into the process of research in history, in the social sciences. It's just a great tool to help make Galileo manageable and accessible, regardless of whether they're doing History Day or not. So on this slide is the permanent link, the address to the permanent link that Galileo created. But I want to show you how you can get to it by accessing Galileo through your school. So here's the Galileo search screen. And of course, you can use a bento search. We're going to talk about that in a moment a little bit more. But you just simply type National History Day into your search window. And what comes up is this massive return. I love this. It gives you a sense of bento in all of its glory, right? Over 5 million scholarly articles, 476 encyclopedias, 284,000 ebooks that have those key words in them, right? And then if you look over here where the red arrow is, there's a link under databases that says National History Day. That is the link to our resource guide, right? So if you click on that link, here you are. At this moment, you're in this guide. This guide lives within Galileo, but it's a guide for students to Galileo and to the resources available through them, right? That gets that 294 out of the way and just gives them a framework. Notice the tabs on the top, right? We've got the About NHD page, which is basically the landing page to the guide. Tells you who we are, what we're about, how to contact us. And then you'll see we have an encyclopedia tab, a Galileo resources tab, a primary resources tab, and an additional resources tab. So let me walk you through very quickly what each of those tabs offers. So if we go to encyclopedias, when we talk History Day with students, we always say, start with the encyclopedia. You got to start there. Nice introduction, get grounded in your topic, and then get more focused and more specific. So we wanted to start with encyclopedias. If you look on this page, you'll see that we have three. Literally, my friends, these are the three that History Day kids use the most often. You notice we put right at the top New Georgia Encyclopedia. That's because so many of our History Day students do projects in 8th grade Georgia studies. So they're going to be doing Georgia history topics. So boom, there it is. Just click on the blue link and you're there. Encyclopedia Britannica and the New World Encyclopedia by Funk and Wagnalls. Those are the other two general encyclopedias that are there. We're going to talk a little bit more about Britannica in a moment, but you notice that's what's on the page. We want to encourage History Day students to begin with a good encyclopedia article. So that's where it is. That's the first tab, right? And those are the three. And our students can do far, far worse than clicking on Encyclopedia Britannica and using the article there, right? Then what? So then we have a page, a tab, that points to Galileo resources. Now here we get to it. This is a big page. There's a lot on it, but it's not 294. Now what Russell and our colleagues at Galileo did was they inserted there a search box, right? So if you want to go and you want to jump right into another bento search or a specific search from there, you can. But if we scroll down the screen, I want you to take a look at a couple of things. And again, remember, we're primarily targeting middle and early high school students with the way we built this. You'll notice that we have a box with 4 history databases, not 200, 4. And the very first one is the History Reference Center. Now, why is it sitting at the top of this section? Well, if any of you have any experience with the History Reference Center, you know that it's got all kinds of stuff and it's got all kinds of material. But what's really cool about this, my friends, is that you can limit searches based upon Lexile reading scores. So you can literally sit with a student in your classroom, you know, as a weaker reader, as a developing reader, as a proficient reader, wherever they're at, and you can literally help them adjust their searches so that you know the material that comes up that they're going to be having access to is work that is appropriate for their reading level, for their comprehension level, and from where they are. That's why that is sitting at the top. So does this mean you got to be a History Day student to do this? No, absolutely not. But it's a great reference. It's a great tool that can help students build that confidence, understand the material they're dealing with, not get overwhelmed, and it's sitting right there at the top. We've got 3 other databases that are there, right? That again are kind of appropriate for age and grade level and where they're at, right? But we really, really recommend folks hit that History Reference Center. Then if you look down lower on the screen, you've got ebooks, right? Notice what we did there. We pulled and established links for the EBSCO ebook collections that are grade appropriate. So we've got a link to the K through 8 collection. We've got a link to the high school collection. Again, what Russell and his team at Galileo did was we were able to pull age appropriate and reading level appropriate and the kinds of databases that are going to work with our students and work with where they are at. So that's the Galileo Resources tab. And again, that's it. That's all that's there. It's not 294. It's just 6, right? It's just 7. Then we get to primary sources. Okay, and here's another big one, right? Because what is it that we said? And you see how our tabs are going. We're starting with an encyclopedia, then we're going to secondary sources. Now we're into the primary source stuff, right? And we're thinking about what is it that our History Day kids use the most. And take a look. There it is. Bam, right out of the gate. Yeah, the Digital Library of Georgia, Georgia Historical Newspapers, the Civil Rights Digital Library, and the Digital Library of America's Civil Rights Resources. Why? Because so many of our students do civil rights history topics, and so many of them do Georgia. So yes, we can find all of these by going through those 294 databases, but look what our friends have done. They put those four right there under the tab. You're ready to go. We scroll down a little bit. Yeah. And if you have students that are interested in Asian history or European history, there you go. You've got an option. Notice we've got a little category here for historical newspapers. And yeah, we put Georgia historical newspapers in there again because it's so popular. There's nothing wrong with having it in more than one place in this little guide. But we also put Chronicling America there. That's the Library of Congress digitized newspaper database. No, it's not newspapers.com. It's something there the Library of Congress provides. It's completely legit. We have full confidence in it. It's a wonderful resource that's sitting there. And then if you look down at that bottom box on this page, there are organizations that simply get so many queries from National History Day kids that they've created their own pages. So down here at the box, look what you've got. You've got the National History Day resource page from the National Archives. Tremendous resource. And then NASA. Poor NASA. They got so many letters and emails and requests from History Day students to interview astronauts that they just built their own website for History Day kids, right? And they did that. And then our friends at the Medieval Academy did the same thing, right? They literally have a digital database of resources, and they've identified those resources within their database that are appropriate for History Day kids. So there you go. So then we've got one more tab, which is additional resources. And look what we've done. We've got a link to the Internet History Source Books, which is just a huge collection of translated primary source materials that cut across world global history. And then we have, of course, for the inevitable number of topics that are focused on World War II, the National Holocaust Memorial Museum and the World War II Museum. This entire resource guide, my friends, is built based upon our experience of what our students, what our History Day students use. And it brings to a core set of about 20 or 25 different databases across all of the different categories, those fundamental resources that predominantly middle school students can use when they're working on a project. So that is literally a living, breathing product of our partnership. One other thing, as our time together winds down, that I wanted to show you was the way in which National History Day Georgia and Galileo collaborates to fine-tune resources and opportunities for students to really thrive and be successful. You all are familiar with the bento search, right? This is a new tool that rolled out a couple of years ago. Our resource guide that I just introduced you to predates bento. Bento's a wonderful search tool. It's designed to really make things, to make Galileo more accessible and more manageable. But I wanted to show you something. I've typed in on that screen the Battle of Gettysburg because this year, with turning points in history as our topic, our theme for the year, the Battle of Gettysburg will be a topic that many, many students will choose. Well, if we do a bento search of the Battle of Gettysburg, what you'll see is there we are. We got 52 encyclopedias and 17,000 articles and 11,000 ebooks, and we got this huge collection. But notice over there on your screen by encyclopedias, you'll notice Gettysburg Battle of Britannica Online. When bento first went online, their encyclopedia, their coding for encyclopedias defaulted to Funk and Wagnall's New World Encyclopedia, which has very, very short entries on the topics. We looked at that and realized in History Day world that Encyclopedia Britannica and Britannica Online, a database we use through Galileo and point History Day kids to all the time, it goes into the topics in a much more deeper and systematic way. It has different versions, as you guys know, for elementary, middle, and high school, different levels of readers, different levels and types of supporting material. It just Britannica Online within Galileo is a very powerful tool. And so one of the things that we did was we had a meeting with our friends in Galileo and Russell, who does all of this great work for us. And we had the code changed so that when a bento search occurs, the encyclopedia that comes up first is Britannica Online. And that's the nature of the relationship that we have with our friends at Galileo. They are not just an ally, they are a fundamentally important component and partner in what we do. And I can't praise them enough. Because remember what History Day does and what through History Day all of our partners help your students achieve. They build those skills that will lead to success later in school and later in their lives. And it builds their self-esteem and it builds their confidence. And so that, in short, is an example and an illustration of the powerful alliance and partnership that National History Day Georgia has with Galileo. I'm going to stop sharing at this point. We are at 11:32.
I wanted to thank you for that presentation. I was like writing down some of your gems. I said, okay, I'm gonna have to put this in a newsletter or something, because you said a lot of really great things, and now my dog understands that you did as well.
I'm just really sorry that we had whatever glitch happened there in the middle of the presentation. But if you have any other questions, if you want to learn more, if you want to follow up, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, it's kshirley@lagrange.edu, or visit our website, www.lagrange.edu/NHD. We always love to talk History Day and Galileo with you. So don't hesitate to holler at us.
Thank you, everyone. I don't see any questions or raised hands, so we will end it there. I see Karen is typing something. Probably going to be a thank you. Wait to see. Okay, it's back. But like you said, if any of you have further questions, Kevin is, easy to reach. His contact information will be available to you all, as well as a recording of this session. Yes, the session was recorded. See the question. And it will be available to the public and anyone who wants to access it via our YouTube channel. Maybe by the end of next week, I'll be doing all the sessions at once. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Kevin, for presenting, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a great day.